So Dan, this is Dan Schroeder. I'm Scott Moore with Moore Engineering. We're going to talk about friction. This is kind of an informal video, so we're just going to chat about it and kind of see where it goes. Moore Engineering does a lot of friction testing. We do slip resistance testing of floors, and we do other scientific experiments relative to prototyping and friction and those types of things. And I know that, Dan, when you got here, you knew what a slippery floor was.
I may have.
You dealt with them in your work, I assume.
I did, very often.
You did. And it's interesting because the principles around coefficient of friction, you remember from your physics book in high school, it's a couple pages. It's not a lot. But the complexity in the industry is kind of significant. And it's taken years to get a really good consensus and everybody to kind of agree on it, what we do and how we do it and why we do it. So Dan, what have you thought about that so far? I mean, has it been surprising how difficult it is, or is it, what are your thoughts?
No, I actually think it was a really, just a different level of what I did. So it's the scientific version of what I did. And as you put it best, it's a means to an answer, right? So, if you think about it, there's a puddle on the floor or a substance on the floor and somebody slips. When you're working in retail as a retail manager, all you know is that somebody slipped. We should clean that up. This gives data and the answers to, how that happened or why that happened. And I think that's the difference maker. And even in some of the recommendations of the test flooring and the upkeep of flooring, the reasons behind that upkeep of flooring are so much more forefront in that now that I know that the testing side of it and the standard side of it.
Yeah, it's funny, the investigation sometimes of these, either the accidents or the issues that we're presented with can be very interesting. I did one a couple of years ago where there was a vacuum drainage system that took it was in a grocery store. I don't know if you've ever seen one of these, but it has this huge tank and vacuum pump in the back. And instead of having plumbing that goes underneath the concrete slab, it uses basically an absolutely massive shop vac to shop vac all the condensate water from all of the refrigerator units. And when that stops working, it puts water all over the floor everywhere. And we had a couple of similar investigations where we had flooring failures that were like, hey, where's this water coming from? But certainly that application of the scientific process into investigating both claims and also failures. That's been a fun part of this, for me anyway, and it seems like you've picked up on it. This was supposed to be a light video, though. It's already turned into something technical, which I guess is one of the downsides to hiring an engineering firm, is that we will give you an answer.
Well, I was actually going to go with some more technical stuff, but for me too, one of the learning lessons in it is really, a lot of times the flooring might not necessarily be the issue. There are times where the flooring could just be a failing floor. But the reality is a lot of times those slips and falls are created by unexpected change in friction. So just because it doesn't necessarily have a failed floor, that customer, that person that slipped was not expecting that hazard in that environment, and the data can show the difference between a wet and a dry and what that can do to cause that slip or fall. And I think that was something for me that's really stuck home, where it doesn't necessarily have to break down. It's not a very XY. There's a lot of factors within this.
Yes, it's not that just objective one thing. And since we're talking about friction, let me talk about what friction is. Friction is essentially the interaction between two surfaces. And that friction coefficient is just a ratio. It's the ratio of the horizontal force acting between those surfaces divided by the normal force pushing them together. And in walkways, the preferred term is the available traction. And that traction is what we use when we walk on a floor, the available traction. Typically, we're using way less traction or friction than is actually there, but we have a slip and fall a lot of times because either an unexpected reduction and our body hasn't accommodated for it, or it's just lower than we need when we are ambulating and walking. That unexpected aspect of it, though, is very common. I do a lot of work in slip, strips, and falls, or slip and falls relative to snow and ice. And in snow and ice, that unexpected ice when you're walking on what you think is dry or even wet pavement, That's usually what causes the problem, but yeah. This is supposed to be fun with friction. We're going to do a couple other episodes of this. For now, this has been
Facts with friction.
Facts with friction, maybe a background primer for friction and what it is.
Zero humor.
Zero humor, yeah. There's some dryness that somebody might think is funny.
You want a dry humor. It's as dry as you can get.
This is as dry as it gets, yeah. I smiled.
I cried.
I cried. All right. Next time, test more, slip less.
Salt.